All right, one of the most important people in a purchase of a home is your home inspector. Here today is Cameron Anderson of Integrity Home Inspection. We're just going to talk generally about what a home inspector is and what he does.
Sure.
So what does a home inspector do?
Well, basically a home inspection is a visual evaluation of the house. We're going to go through and look at certain systems. It's mandated by the state what we do and don't do. It's all visual. We don't deconstruct. We don't get into tearing the house apart. We don't come in with bib overalls and a sledgehammer. But we basically look at all of the major systems and look for major problems, specifically items that might be unsafe or significantly deficient, not working in some way.
So basements are really important to me.
Very important, very important.
I say that if a house was a human, it'd be from here down, because it's the feet, the foundation, but it's also where the plumbing is, the electrical, the furnace.
Correct.
On and on and on. So what are you looking at when you're looking at a basement?
Sure. Well, we're going to be looking at the big things, obviously. The foundation, the framing, the heating, air conditioning, the plumbing, the electrical. Most of the important systems in a house are located in the basement, and so that's where we're going to spend most of our time.
Okay. So what's the most important?
Well, probably the most important that comes up in most people's minds is the foundation. They're going to ask, is it a wet basement or is it a dry basement? We're going to be looking for major things in the way of movement, in the way of moisture entry, mold growth, those common things that people have concerns about.
For me as a realtor, the reason that a home inspector is so important is, for one, you have a system of looking for things.
Correct.
I've flipped homes. I know, foundations. I know most everything about a house.
Sure.
But I still will have an inspector look at a house before I flip it because it's systematic, right?
Yes, correct.
And you're looking at things that my eye wouldn't necessarily pick up.
Yeah, and that tends to be the case, that we're going to have a very specific path that we take through the house. We have a lot of experience in seeing how the house works as a whole, and so we kind of look where people don't think to look often. And so that's often the reason why people want a home inspection, is because we can give them a much overall broad view of what the condition of the house is.
So a home inspector is there to make a sale not go through. Is that correct?
No, not at all, not at all. Sometimes we're known as deal killers, but the reality is our job is to simply provide as much information for the client as they need to make educated decisions.
Almost every single house has problems.
Everyone I've seen so far, but they range, definitely. There are houses that are pretty bad, and sometimes people are buying houses to flip them, like you say you do. Mm-hmm. And some of those houses can be pretty distressed, all the way up to houses where you only take 2 or 3 photos, and they're in really good condition, but they have a few small improvements that could be made, or a couple of small mistakes in how things were put together.
So what's the number one problem that you find in a basement?
Probably the number one issue is moisture intrusion. We are going to find always there's going to be cracks in the foundation, and almost always there's drainage issues around the house of some sort that happen. Whether it be that people don't remember to clean their gutters, or they have problems with the grade coming towards the house, or maybe they knocked one of the leaders off their gutters. Somehow water gets close to the foundation and then it starts coming in. And so looking for stains, looking for moisture entry, looking for signs of damage, whether it be stains at the base of drywall, stains in the corners of the foundation, and then potentially mold growth from high humidity due to moisture entry. Those are really the bread and butter of what we're going to be looking for with foundations.
What's other problems that can happen that cause water to come in?
Yeah, sure. Well, there are times, I've seen times where a pool is leaking near the house, or faucets that go to the exterior have a constant drip, and that constant drip is keeping the soil damp right next to the house, and even causing trickling water to come in. A lot of people think icicles are wonderful and great, and they're pretty, but they're actually they're a sign of a pretty serious problem with snow that's melting off too rapidly, and that overflow is going to be dumping water right next to the house as well. So there's quite a few different ways, and often the home inspector, when we're going through the house, we're just trying to figure out what it is that's causing the moisture, and sometimes it's very rare and unique things that you wouldn't expect. You've got to have a method of controlling the humidity level inside the house so that even if you do have some sort of a moisture issue, a water event where maybe we have extensive rains for a long period of time, the house is already dry. It's already primed and ready to continue to stay dry, and the dehumidifier creates that environment. Well, you don't automatically start growing mold. You don't automatically start having moisture problems every time there's a rainstorm.
So another problem that you find are movements.
Yeah, usually the small cracks are the first thing that you start to see, and those certainly are important from the standpoint of monitoring. We always have to keep track of the small ones because that's where the big ones come from. But generally, home inspectors are going to be looking for movement that is significant, meaning movement where displacement has occurred. The foundation has shifted in some way. Openings of an eighth of an inch to a quarter of an inch, or certainly greater. Inward buckling is something. So whether the walls are plumb is important. Basically, any type of movement that's outside of the norm, whether it be because of tipping in the corner from gutters draining in a wrong way, or if there's pressure against the wall that's causing the wall to push inward, all of those kind of things are things we're going to look at. The type of cracks, the size of the cracks, the positioning of the cracks, those all matter to whether or not they're a concern. And that's a good thing about a home inspector is that we can tell you generally whether those cracks need further attention or not.
Okay. What other issues do you find in basements?
Yeah. So going back to the moisture issue, a lot of times people will say that I'm seeing salt, I'm seeing residue on my foundation. That's actually called efflorescence. It's not effervescence.
A word that I cannot say.
Yeah. It's efflorescence. It's basically minerals that come through the wall and they can eat away your paint. That's one of the first things people see is they paint a wall. A side note to that would be I'm a big proponent of not painting your walls in a basement. If you can live with a bare concrete wall, do, because you actually provide a food source for mold when you paint it, and water always wins, and you'll be repainting very quickly over the next few years because of that mineral residue that leaches through and is eats up the paint basically. As far as other issues, we get into areas of mold growth, and that becomes pretty big because of high moisture content. That's where we're going to be looking through all of even the storage, the walls, the framing up above us. That's one of the prime places we have to look at every square inch almost of the framing to see if there's any mold growth. And that encompasses a lot of what we're doing, just looking at the surfaces to verify if there's been any problems.
Okay, we're standing in front of a furnace
Sure.
and a water heater.
Sure.
What problems do we find with those?
Yeah, so furnaces and water heaters, we certainly look at those. We run them. We basically, it's kind of an audio and a visual inspection. So we want to know that it's operating and cycling on and off correctly. So when we're looking at furnaces, sometimes we're going to be checking for the exhaust gases that are coming out. We're going to be checking to see if gas leaks are occurring, or we're going to see if the blower is running quietly, if there's vibration. We'll look at the inner workings, remove the front covers. We do the same with the water heater as well. The water heater is going to be operated. We'll remove the front covers down below, check the flame, check the combustion gases, check the flues. That includes going all the way up to the roof at times and through the attic as well, just to see if all the different components are working the way we would expect them to work. Again, it's visual, but we go a little bit deeper than just visual because we actually are running the units.
So other parts that are normally down here are the electrical panel.
Correct, yeah. We're going to look at the electrical panel. Some inspectors remove the panel. I do. We do look at the inner wiring just to see how the breakers, how things were wired, how the breakers look. Are there any areas of scorched wiring? How the basic install was done. Was it a do-it-yourselfer, which you can kind of tell right away when you open a panel. If it looks like spaghetti, it was probably not professionally done.
Yeah.
If you see a lot of panels all added on, lots of junction boxes throughout the basement in the ceilings, that's usually a sign often of do-it-yourselfer work or remodeling that was performed. And so you really want to take a close look then to make sure that things were done right. The wiring issue also, or what we look for in wiring, also includes all the fixtures and the outlets throughout the house as well. So as we go through the house, including the plumbing, we're going to be kind of looking at all of the different extensions of the major systems in the basement, from the water heater, from the electrical panel and such.
Okay. Water softeners.
Sure, those are really outside the scope. And there's a list of things that are kind of outside the scope. Water softeners, security systems, fire suppression or sprinkler systems, lawn sprinkler systems. Generally, those are outside the scope, but different inspectors we're not limited by the state. We can certainly always add things. And so if we want to, we can look at those things and, charge accordingly or offer it as an additional inspection.
Okay. Plumbing.
Plumbing, we're going to be looking at all of the supply lines, all of the waste drains. We're going to be looking at all the fixtures throughout the house, all of the pipes. Again, we're looking for do-it-yourselfer work because plumbing is one of the prime places where people they're not afraid of plumbing. They're afraid of electrical more than they are of plumbing. Right. And so often you come in and you see that it's very obvious that things have been done in a way that was less than professional. And so once we've looked at the plumbing, we'll mention any items that maybe we think you need to have a plumber come in and take a look at. And then they'll get you further from there. Some of the additional things we would look for in a basement would be egress windows, especially if you have a basement bedroom. That's going to be, again, required by code enforcement. I should say, by the way, in regards to that, we're not code inspectors. And so even though we may be guided by the codes, we're not the ones enforcing the code. We're not going to tell you if everything in the house was constructed up to code. Yeah. But egress windows is a great example of that, where if you put a bedroom in, you have to have one, and there are certain measurements for how it's supposed to be installed.
Our laws differ from other states. What you inspect may be required in some areas and are not required
Absolutely,
here.
Even in different jurisdictions. So up in Chicago, wiring is different than down in Peoria.
Everything's a little bit different in Chicago.
Yeah, true.
Anyways, I want to thank Cameron Anderson of Integrity Home Inspection for coming in and talking to us.
Thank you.